Okay, the other day we finished, so to speak, the introduction to Hilchos Shabbos, the biblical halachos, the rabbinic halachos, the reason for the various rabbinic halachos, and so on. So this is something we started a while ago. We just started it, we never continued. So let's learn a little bit about the din and what's called Muktzeh. Now, even though in Poskim there's an argument if Muktzeh is biblical or rabbinic, but the halacha is, most opinions say, the whole concept of Muktzeh, we'll see what that means, is only rabbinic nature, not biblical. Now, Muktzeh means, literally the definition of the word Muktzeh means set aside. Now let me give the introduction to the concept of Muktzeh as follows. When they started rebuilding the second Bais Din, the Jews came back with Ezra and Nehemiah, and the Jews came from Bavel, they were intermarried, there was a lot of problems in the observance of Yiddishkeit. So bottom line was, a lot of Jews were very lax in the laws of Shabbos. So Nehemiah, who was together with Ezra, but see, he was the one that did it, instituted a very strict observance of what's called Muktzeh. Basically, he wanted, when something is bent all the way to the left, you want to get it back to the middle, you have to go all the way to the right. So he made extreme concept. He said you basically cannot move anything except things relating to food. Cutlery, food, plates. That's it. Basically, he forbade everything from being moved. As people started getting more involved back into the dinim of Shabbos, so then they started removing the strictnesses of Muktzeh until they have the Muktzeh that we have it today, which is, again, this whole book. Now, the reason why the Chachamim added the concept that's rabbinic, why did they add this concept of Muktzeh? Muktzeh means moving certain things. Not touching, but moving. Now, there's a few reasons why the Chachamim said you can't move certain things on Shabbos. One is because if you're just allowed to move anything whatsoever, you might come to do a malacha. Like if you're allowed to move a hammer, you might knock in a nail, which is construction. Or if you have a fire, whatever, you might come to do things forbidden on Shabbos. Another reason of Muktzeh is brought down from the Ravid that you might come to carry on Shabbos. If I could just move and carry and everything, so I'll end up carrying it out into the street on Shabbos. And the third reason for Muktzeh is there are people that don't work a whole week. Right? A lot of people don't work a whole week. So for them, what is Shabbos? What Shabbos is different than the weekday? They don't work anyway on Shabbos. So therefore, they added a stricter observance for those people that don't work a whole week anyway, that they have the concept of Muktzeh. But the bottom line is, Muktzeh is something which is forbidden to move because it's removed from the person's mind. Now there's a lot of different, there's like 6 or maybe even 7 categories of Muktzeh. We're going to go, it's not hard, it's relatively easy in understanding. And let's start with something which is not a utensil. This is halacha, is a very, Poskim is very complicated to define exactly what is a keli, what's not a keli. But as we go through it, we'll understand it much better. Now, something which is usable on Shabbos, as is, which is called keli shemelachto leheter. Keli, a vessel that its primary purpose is for something permissible. Like for instance, fork, knife, plates, tables, chairs, all these things are permissible usages on Shabbos. So they're basically not muktzeh at all. It says in halacha for absolutely no reason you shouldn't move it. But the poskim discussed that that's, you just generally, when you move something, you move it for a reason. So, keli shemelachto leheter, we're going to learn the cases. I want to start with the second one, which is called keli shemelachto leisser. Basically, it means like this. Any utensil, anything that is forbidden to do that on Shabbos. I'll give you an example. A pen is made to write. Writing is forbidden on Shabbos. A hammer is made for construction. Construction is forbidden on Shabbos. Anything which is primarily used for something which, and we'll learn a lot of examples of this, things that are primarily used for things which are forbidden to do on Shabbos, that is what's called keli shemalachta le'isser, a vessel whose primary use is for something forbidden. And we're going to give cases and so on. Now, what is the din of this muktzeh? Because different muktzehs have different dinim. The most practical muktzeh for most people is what's called keli shemalachta le'isser, which means something which is primary use is for something forbidden. You're not allowed to move it only for two circumstances, two times, for two causes. One, if you need the place where the object is on. Let's say somebody left a hammer on the dining room table. Okay? Friday afternoon, they left the hammer on the table. Now you need to set this Friday night, it's Shabbos already. You need to set the table for Shabbos, but the hammer is in the way. So the din is, it's called tzerich mekaymi. I need the place it's on. I'm allowed to pick up on Shabbos. I can pick up the hammer and put it where it belongs. Because I need the place that the hammer is on, or the pen, or the scissors, or anything like that. Another way you would be allowed to move those things is if you want to do something permissible with it. If I want to do something permissible with the keli shemalachta le'isser, I would be allowed to do it. For instance, if I want to crack open a coconut on Shabbos, now you're allowed to open a coconut on Shabbos. But in order to open a coconut on Shabbos, I need a hammer and a screwdriver, to bang it, to zets it. So I would be allowed to take a hammer on Shabbos to crack open a coconut. So there's two times, all these types we're going to learn a lot of different cases. Okay? Musical instruments. There's a lot of issues that are called keli shemalachta le'isser. But it means like this. If the primary use of this vessel is something for forbidden use, I can only move it if I need the place it's on, or I need to do something permissible with it. But what happens if it's outside in the street and I'm afraid it's going to get stolen, or I'm afraid it's going to get ruined? It's raining, it might get ruined. Then I'm not allowed to carry it in. I'm not allowed to, it's muktzeh. The only time I can use keli, and we're going to learn a lot of examples for this, things that are keli shemalachta le'isser, meaning if the vessel's primary use is for something forbidden, if I need the place I can move it, I want to do something permissible with it, I'm allowed to use it, move it. But if I want to move it for itself, meaning I don't want it to get stolen or lost, I'm not allowed to move it. What?
The plastic bottle that we buy juice or grape juice.
The what?
The bottle of the juice. There is a gap that you have to somehow break it, open it. So it's better to do it before Shabbat or even.
You have the same thing with a soda bottle.
Usually I break it.
You have a soda bottle, also the same question. With a soda bottle, you have the same question. Like opening a soda bottle when the ring stays underneath. So there's no question the best thing is to open it before Shabbos. But if you didn't, so there are opinions in halacha that are strict that hold you can't open it. Why? Because when you open the bottle and there's a ring at the bottom, then you're making the bottle cap into a vessel. Okay? Many people hold that. We don't hold like that. We hold that you're allowed to open a bottle on Shabbos even if there's going to be leftover a rim at the bottom. That's the way we hold. Now the only time you couldn't do that, sometimes, and when they have a bottle cap, they sometimes stamp it on the side. Now sometimes the stamp ends up to be exactly in the middle. When you open the bottle, you rip the letters. Then you can't do it on Shabbos. because then you're erasing letters. But if not, let's see, the stamp is on top, or there is no stamp. Then the way we hold is you're allowed to open a bottle, even though it leaves over a ring at the bottom. We hold you allowed. Obviously, it's best to open it before. What?
Is that not like a boot that has something on the side of it? You open it and you put it back. It's just.
No, because here you're actually erasing the letters.
You can put it back.
No, but that is still you erase. When you have a book like this, the letters are already there. You're not doing anything to the letters. If somebody takes a piece of paper that has letters on it and rips the paper, that's mamish erasing on Shabbos. It's not biblically forbidden because only time you biblically is you erase with the intent of writing. But even just ripping a paper that has letters on it is rabbinically forbidden. But the book is, there are opinions that are machmer book. Now the Rebbe says though that you can be lenient because you're not writing or erasing. The letter's are already there, you're just bringing them closer and further. Okay, now, so therefore any vessel which is used and you want to move it, let's say a gufei mekaymei, then you're allowed to. By the way, there's a din, sometimes you're allowed, halacha says you could cheat. What happened, let's say I left a pen outside and I'm afraid it's going to get stolen. So I can create a use for the pen that I want to, let's say, make it a bookmarker, to keep the page of the book. So then you're allowed to do it. If a hammer is outside, I'll show you a million cases of this, that you have a hammer outside and you don't want it to get stolen, so you bring it in to crack open a walnut,
So this is from the Rabbanan or what?
Muktzeh Rabbanim. That's why the Chachamim were lenient certain times and at certain times they were strict. It depends what the situation is. But to move it from the sun to the shade or something like that, then you can't do it. Okay, now let's discuss some of the cases, what we're talking about. Okay, I'll give you an example. This is a very interesting example. Even pots and pans. Pots that you cook your soup in. Yeah? What is the purpose of that pot primarily? It's to cook. Nobody uses a pot to eat from. You have a soup pot, right? The purpose of the pot is to cook in. So halachically, a soup pot is a keli shemalachte le'isr. Its primary use is for something forbidden. But if there's food in the pot, then the pot is secondary, it's bottled to the food, and therefore because you can move the food, you're allowed to move the pot also. But let's say somebody has an empty soup pot on the counter. Okay, what they did was they finished cooking the soup and they transferred the soup, and now they have a pot on the table, and even if they clean, it doesn't matter if it's dirty or clean. That pot, because it doesn't have any food in it, is keli shemalachte le'isr. It's a vessel whose primary use is for something forbidden. But if I want to use it to put food into, then I'm using it for permissible usage. Or if the pot is on the kitchen counter and I need that space of the kitchen counter, we just learned tzerich mekaymei, you need the place, then you would also be allowed to move it. Because then you're moving, let's say, gufei umekaymei. Either you want to do something with it permissible, like to put food into it to store, or you need the place where the pot's on, so therefore again you're allowed to move it. But just if you don't need the place, and you have an empty pot that you normally cook in, or frying pan or whatever, you can't move it on Shabbos unless if you need the place or you want to do something permissible with it. But I'll give you another example, which is a very interesting thing. On Shabbos, you're not allowed to measure. Okay? It's all part of the business, the Gzeir of the Rabbanim about not doing business on Shabbos. So when people do business, they normally measure, how much you're buying, how much you're selling, you measure it. So you have these measuring cups. The Pyrex measuring cups, right? Everybody has in the kitchen. That they're basically made for measuring. That's what you usually don't drink from a Pyrex measuring cup. Use it to measure. Therefore, because measuring is forbidden on Shabbos, a measuring glass is keli shemalachta le'isr. But what happens if I want to pour liquid in it to drink from? Then it's not muktzeh because I'm using it for something permissible. If the Pyrex measuring cup was left on the table and I need the place, I'm allowed to move it. Once it's in my hand, I can move it to wherever it goes, and that's fine. But what happens if I don't need the place and I'm not using the cup for something permissible? That measuring cup is muktzeh, you're not allowed to move it. Unless if you need the place or you want to do something permissible with it. So halacha says, you decide to pour water in it, you'll take a drink from it, and then if it's stable, and then then it's not muktzeh anymore.
So there are some way to cheat.
It's not cheating because then you're just creating a purpose for it. Once you're creating a purpose for it, it's not muktzeh. Same thing applies to baking pans, pot covers, all those things are kelish melachta le'isr. Now, what happens to mashul? Sewing needles. Needles that you sew with. What is that needle primarily used for? Sewing. Sewing is forbidden on Shabbos. So therefore, a needle is called kelish melachta le'isr. What happens though? So I can't move it. Only if I need the thing for something permissible, or I need the place. So what happens? I need it to take something out. I don't want to get into it later, it's going to matter. But let's say you have a splinter, and the splinter is not deep. If you take the splinter out, it's not for sure going to bleed. We mentioned this the other day when we were learning Enim Eskaven. So then, I'm allowed to take the needle, even though the needle is kelish melachta le'isr, and I can take out the splinter if it's not for sure going to bleed. So again, I'm using it for something permissible. Okay, to be continued.